Greater condemnation. For in many things we offend all. If any man offend not in word, the same is a perfect man, and able also to bridle the whole body. Behold, we put bits in the horses' mouths, that they may obey us, and we turn about their whole body. Behold also the ships, which, though they be so great, and are driven of fierce winds, yet are they turned about with a very small helm, whithersoever the governor listeth. Even so, the tongue is a little member, and boasteth great things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire kindleth. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. So is the tongue among our members, that it defileth the whole body, and setteth on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire of hell. For every kind of beasts, and of birds, and of serpents, and of things in the sea is tamed, and hath been tamed of mankind. But the tongue can no man tame. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. Therewith bless we God, even the Father, and therewith curse we men, which are made after the similitude of God. Out of the same mouth proceedeth blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not so to be. Doth a fountain send forth at the same place sweet water and bitter? Can the fig tree, my brethren, bear olive berries? Either a vine figs? So can no fountain both yield salt water and fresh. Who is a wise man and endued with knowledge among you? Let him show out of a good conversation his works with meekness of wisdom. But if ye have bitter envying and strife in your hearts, glory not, and lie not against the truth. This wisdom descendeth not from above, but is earthly, sensual, devilish. For where envying and strife is, there is confusion and every evil work. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace of them that make peace. Father, thank you for today. Thank you for the beauty of the snow and the reminder of your goodness and your forgiveness of our sins. Thank you for sending Jesus that we can have this forgiveness. I pray that you would bless this service. I pray for Duane as he gives us message on James 3. I pray that you would speak clearly through him, that we as your people would be built up, that we could hear your voice and respond to it. I pray these things in your name. Amen.
Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Good morning. It's good to be here again this morning. I've been blessed so far. One of the comments in Sunday school that stood out to me was this: if we're bickering at home and focused on correcting things at home, it's hard to reach out. And I think that goes well. It's a good primer for what I'm thinking about today. James 3, the unruly tongue. Have you ever said something and later stayed awake thinking about what you said and how you could have said it differently? Or possibly you wish you hadn't said it at all. I think this is one of the scariest things about public speaking. Will I say everything correctly? Will people take me out of context? Will they see the heart or will they see the words? Is what I say pure truth? Or is it personal bias? And I've entitled this message, Bridled by Our Master. James 3, verse 1, My brethren, be not many masters. Another word would be teachers, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation. So being not many masters or teachers has two ideas that I could think of. I'm sure there's more. But we need to practice what we preach. And a good cross-reference for this is in Romans 2, verse 21. Thou, therefore, which teachest another, teachest thou not thyself? Thou that preachest a man should not steal, dost thou steal? So number one, we need to practice what we preach. Number two, we need to be consistent in what we teach. And in 1 Timothy chapter 1, verses 3 and 7, another cross-reference, As I besought thee to abide still in Ephesus, when I went into Macedonia, that thou mightest charge some that they teach no other doctrine, neither give heed to fables and endless genealogies which minister questions, rather than godly edifying which is in faith, so do. Now the end of the commandment is charity out of a pure heart and of a good conscience, and faith unfeigned, from which some having swerved have turned aside unto vain jaggling, desiring to be teachers of the law, understanding neither what they say, nor whereof they affirm. A consistent man is grounded, firmly established, rooted. And in 1 Timothy, Paul encourages Timothy to teach others to teach no other doctrine. So first, we need to practice what we preach. Second, we need to be consistent in what we teach. Why should we not be many masters? James says, My brethren, be not many masters, be not many teachers. Why? Why is he concerned about this? I think it's because the teacher is responsible for misleading his flock. And this can be done both through words, but it can also be done through actions. One commentator said this, and I quote, If a man can use grace and wisdom to bridle his tongue, he will have the grace and wisdom to bridle his life. Controlling our impulses is good, but controlling our tongue is even a step further. Verse 2, For in many things we offend all. If any man offend not in word, the same is a perfect man, and able also to bridle the whole body. Able to bridle the whole body. And in verse 2, I see James zooming in on one particular sin, the sin of a wagging tongue. And for most of the chapter, James dives into this thought, the thought of our speech, the thought of a wagging tongue. And so today, that's what I'm going to be thinking about, talking about, our speech, what we say. We all believe that what we say has a huge impact. There's many verses, 500 some verses about our words. Proverbs 18, verse 21 says, Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof. So I want to take the time to look at some references in the Bible on the power of words. Do I have a volunteer look up Proverbs chapter 15, verse 1? Thank you. And Proverbs 18, verse 8. Thank you. Proverbs 30, verse 6. Proverbs 29:20. Thank you. These are some verses about our words. Proverbs 15:1. Soft answer turneth away wrath. Kind word as well. I can think of a time when I was out paving and things were getting heated between me and somebody else. And the deacon of our church, he's not here today, came up and he started talking and lowering his voice. Every sentence he said, he would lower his voice. Pretty soon, the situation deflated. It doesn't always work that way, but that day it did. A soft answer turns away wrath. If I get caught in an argument, do I have the ability to get quieter? Do I have the ability to slow down and think about what I'm saying? Proverbs 18, verse 8.
The words of a talebearer are as wounds, and they go down into the innermost parts of the belly.
Okay, so again, here we see the contrast of being kind. A talebearer are as wounds. And when somebody wounds us, it goes deep. So are we kind with our words? The next verse, do we exaggerate with our words? Proverbs 30, verse 6.
Add thou not unto his words, lest he reprove thee, and thou become a liar.
So do we add? Do we like to exaggerate? Next one, Proverbs 29:20.
Seest thou a man that is hasty in his words? There is more hope of a fool than of him.
Are we hasty? Do we have to come up with quick responses? Do we think before we speak? Scripture says this about a wise man's words. It says they are heard in quiet. While a fool shouts, the wise man can speak softly and still be heard. A wise man's words are gracious. A wise man's words are as goads. Some of you might not know what a goad is. I didn't really know what it was, so I looked it up. And it's a sharp stick or pointed object that can be used to drive cattle or point the cattle in the right direction. So sometimes our words may not be seen as kind, but they really are. They're pointing us in the right direction. It may hurt at first, but the deeper we look into those words, the more we realize the truth behind them. And a wise man's words are as a goad, a spiked stick that's used to drive cattle or to point someone in the right direction. Another thing, a wise man's words are as nails fastened. Now, I had to think of Curtis. Some of you are in the construction business, and I think a couple weeks ago he was trying to pull out a nail, and he got a bloody thumb in the process because the nail just simply wouldn't come out the way it was supposed to. And that's how a wise man's words are. They're like a nail that's hammered in very well. What about Jesus' words? The disciples were astonished at his words. The scribes and the Pharisees sought to trap Jesus by his words. And the topic of our words is an endless one. And I don't think these verses nearly complete. I know it doesn't, but hopefully it's a primer for us to think about what James has to say on our tongue. Are we concerned about our speech? Are we concerned about how we are perceived by others? I know we are, but let's remember that what we say has a huge impact on others. Let's jump into the characteristic James mentions on a wagging tongue. The first characteristic we see, well, he says this about the tongue. The tongue is a little member. He says the tongue is a fire. He says the tongue is a world of iniquity. He says the tongue is set on fire of hell. The tongue can no man tame. The tongue is an unruly evil, and the tongue is full of deadly poison. Verse 2, for in many things we offend all. If any man offend not in word, the same is a perfect man, able also to bridle the whole body. The idea of being bridled. We put bits into horses' mouths so we can control them. And this is specifically done for direction of travel. If I want to turn the horse to the right, I pull on the bit on the right side and the horse turns. Another thing we use it is to slow down or to stop a horse. Who bridles our tongue? Do we put the bridle in ourselves? Does a horse put on his own bridle? No, the answer, of course not. The master of the horse puts the bridle on so that he can control the horse. Do I allow God to bridle me? Do I fight the bit that the master puts in my mouth? Do I fight his turning me aside? You can turn your Bibles to Numbers chapter 22. The story of Balaam and his donkey. Now, this story humored me as a child, and it still does to this day, but there's a lot more than humor in this story. Balaam was told not to curse the people, the children of Israel, by God, but he kept fighting that. He kept fighting and trying to do his own will. I think we have time to read some here, so let's read 21 through 35 in Numbers chapter 22. And I'll let this story pretty much speak for itself. And Balaam rose up in the morning and saddled his donkey and went with the princes of Moab. And God's anger was kindled because he went, and the angel of the Lord stood in the way for an adversary against him. Now he was riding upon his donkey, and his 2 servants were with him. And the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way, and his sword drawn in his hand. And the donkey turned aside out of the way and went into the field. And Balaam smote the donkey to turn her into the way. But the angel of the Lord stood in the path of the vineyards, a wall being on this side and a wall on that side. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she thrust herself unto the wall and crushed Balaam's foot against the wall, and he smote her again. And the angel of the Lord went further and stood in a narrow place where there was no way to turn either to the right hand or to the left. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she fell down under Balaam, and Balaam's anger was kindled, and he smote the donkey with his staff. And the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey, and she said unto Balaam, What have I done unto thee, that thou hast smitten me 3 times? And Balaam said unto the donkey, Because thou hast mocked me, I would there were a sword in my hand, for now I would kill thee. And the donkey said unto Balaam, Am I not thy donkey, upon which thou hast ridden ever since I was thine unto this day? Was I ever wont to do so unto thee? And he said, Nay. Then the Lord opened the eyes of Balaam, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way, and his sword drawn in his hand, and he bowed down his head and fell fat on his face. And the angel of the Lord said unto him, Wherefore hast thou smitten thy donkey these 3 times? Behold, I went out to withstand thee, because thy way is perverse before me. And the donkey saw me and turned from me these 3 times. Unless she had turned from me, surely now also I had slain thee and saved her alive. And Balaam said unto the angel of the Lord, I have sinned, for I knew not that thou stoodest in the way against me. Now therefore, if it displease thee, I will get me back again. And the angel of the Lord said unto Balaam, Go with the men, but only the word that I shall speak unto thee, that shalt thou speak. So Balaam went to the princes of Balak. So first of all, our words should be bridled by our master. The first characteristic of a wagging tongue is that it is unbridled. Verse 3, Behold, we put bits in horses' mouths, that they may obey us, and we turn about their whole body. Second thing James says to look at is, behold, look. Take a look at the ships. Verse 4, which though they be so great, and are driven of fierce winds, and yet are they turned about with a very small helm, whithersoever the governor listeth. So we see big ships, large, powerful. These ships were one of the main things for transportation in their day. They were influential in changing wars, determining who won a war. What do you think of when you think of something big or someone powerful or influential? Who are the heroes in your life, and how do they get their hero status? The usefulness of ships in James' day was the fact that they could be guided by the governor. Our heroes, the big things in our lives, the influential people, men and women, should be those who are guided about by a governor, none other than God. Ships are powerful, big and great, yet they are guided. Think about this. If a ship went whichever way the wind was blowing, where would that ship end up? Would you get on? No, we don't trust something that's blowing about, that has no compass or morals or direction. A wagging tongue is like an unguided ship, a ship with no rudder. 1 minute it's cursing one thing, blessing, next minute it's building up somebody else. Sometimes it's blowing hard and cold. Other times it's still and quiet. Sometimes the tongue can compliment and really build up you in your presence, but when your back is turned, it can really tear you down. And I had to think of a white lie. The tongue that answers one person one way and another person a little differently. Behold the ships, look at the ships. They are guided by a small rudder, that is controlled by the governor. They're not wishy-washy. The governor of the ship has the end destination, the harbor of destination in mind. Verse 5. Even so the tongue is a little member, and boasteth or exaggerates great things. Behold, look, how great a matter a little fire kindleth. Verse 6, and the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. So is the tongue among our members, that it defileth the whole body, and setteth on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire of hell. Look at how great a matter a little fire kindleth. Sparks start out small and spread quickly in the right environment. Most of you can probably think back to a time when you possibly whispered a joke to a friend sitting next to you. And that friend beside you really, really laughed. And soon the whole group of people around are wondering, what's so funny? What happens next? Well, that friend tells the whole group. And soon the whole room's laughing. Our words are like a spark. They can start out small, but they can really spread. On Tuesday, I researched the fire in Los Angeles. And so my numbers here aren't current. But by Tuesday, there were 150,000 people evacuated. 10,000 buildings had been burnt, and 39,000 acres have been burned. And the winds were 75 to 100 miles per hour. James is saying our words are like a spark or a fire. And with the right conditions, they can rapidly spread. So what do? Man, in our natural state, we try to control it. We try to control our words. And it's a noble cause to try to control our words. But what does James say in verses 7 and 8? For every kind of beast, and of birds, and of serpents, and of things in the sea is tamed, and hath been tamed of mankind. But the tongue can no man tame. It is unruly evil, full of deadly poison. We can't tame our words. And our words left in their natural state will condemn way more than they build up. So I was doing a little experiment at home. I saw this experiment on YouTube where a guy had 2 jars, and he put them on the same counter, some distance apart from each other. And the one jar, he put half of an apple in each jar and then sealed them up. And every day he would say some good words to the one apple and say some bad words to another apple. And he claimed that the words he said good words to, that apple didn't mold near as fast. Well, I didn't believe it. So I decided to do the experiment myself. And I was going to bring it along today. I've been doing it for a week and a half, but I forgot it. Anyway, our good apple was actually more moldy than the bad apple. But one thing I did notice in the experiment is that for me it was a lot easier to talk to the bad apple. The bad jar tended to get talked to a lot more than the good jar. So 3 points from that. I had a tendency to direct my exasperation toward the bad apple when I was tempted to express it to my family. So it was fun to see that. The bad apple tended to receive a lot more attention. It was a lot easier to find words of frustration than words of encouragement. And lastly, the apples brought joy to our home because often feelings were expressed towards them. It was interesting to see the timing of expressions of happiness as well as the timing of expressions of frustration and disappointment or harshness. It's good for me to think about how often do I build up? What are my tendencies? The tongue is full of poison, deadly poison, James says. Our words are like a fire, like a spark, and this can be both for the good as well as the bad. At this time, I want to read verses 9 through 18. Therewith bless we God, even the Father, and therewith curse we men, which are made after the similitude of God. 1 John says this, If a man say, I love God, and hateth his brother, he is a liar, for he loveth not his brother whom he hath seen. How can he love God whom he hath not seen? And this commandment have we from him, that he who loveth God love his brother also. Verse 10 of James, Out of the same mouth proceedeth blessing and cursing. Proceedeth blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not so to be. Doth a fountain send forth at the same place sweet water and bitter? Can a fig tree, my brethren, bear olive berries, either a vine figs? So can no fountain both yield salt water and fresh. Who is a wise man and endued with knowledge among you? Let him show out of a good conversation, or a life of integrity, his works with meekness of wisdom. 1 John 3:18, My little children, let us love not in word, neither in tongue, but in deed and in truth. James 14, But if ye have bitter envying and strife in your hearts, glory not and lie not against the truth. This wisdom descendeth not from above, but is earthly, sensual, devilish. For where envying and strife is, there is confusion and every evil work. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated, full of mercies and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. God himself should be our source of control. The wisdom that is from above. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace of them that make peace. Psalm 34, verse 12 through 14 says this, Whoever of you loves life and desires to see many good days, keep your tongue from evil and your lips from telling lies. Turn from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. So back to the question. Since no man can tame the tongue, what are we to do? What if we ask this question instead? Who can control the tongue? God can. Psalm 141:3. Set a guard over my mouth, O Lord. Keep watch over the door of my lips. So a little bit of review what we learned this morning. Leaders are to practice what they preach. Be not many masters. Live lives of consistency, both in words and actions, knowing that they will be held accountable. Let's be like a bridled horse, willing to be guided by our master, by God. Behold or look at the ships. Who are our heroes? Who do we esteem? Are they driven by winds or guided about by their governor? Our words should not be wishy-washy. Lastly, behold, our words are like a spark, like a fire. They spread quickly. Our words are both powerful for the good as well as the bad. And lastly, verses 17 and 18. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace of them that make peace. Let's stand for prayer.